go. Hi again. My name is Hannah, and we're here to talk about life experience design today with Lia.
Hey, everybody. So about us, let's see, Hannah, you want to start?
Yeah. So we are two product designers. I am based in San Francisco, and I've been designing for a wide range of products. Currently work for Lyft, previously Google and Oracle. Working on web, mobile, and beyond the mobile screens, like voice and lights. And I am very excited to start thinking about how do I apply things that I know at works to just the life in general. So yeah, I think design methodology typically applies to product and services, but I believe that design thinking can also be used in our daily life. I'm very passionate about helping people, applying design principles to many aspects of our lives. And I want to help people, discover meaningful and mindful personal journey.
Cool. Yeah, and I'm Lia Federhoff, Hannah's counterpart and co-founder for Life Experience Design. I have 12 years of working in UX design, user experience design, also designing for mobile, for web. Hannah and I met at Google. We sat next to each other actually for a few years. We both left since then, but yeah, we were catching up a couple of years ago and started talking about how we found we could use what we do in our day-to-day for design thinking, to basically hack life or improve and innovate on our ideals. So it's been a fun journey, and we're happy to share with you how to do that for yourselves.
I want to, I don't know, how will you raise hands? How many of you are UX designers in this group? Maybe Marianne, do you know?
Nobody? Ooh.
I feel like probably nobody, but if there is one, please speak up.
That's awesome. Yeah. So if you're not a UX designer, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this concept of the design process, but this is how we do at work. And usually when we design and trying to solve a design problem, this is the first 4 steps that we are doing in our daily job. So discover, define, design, and deliver. So Lia and I, we're product designers. So discover phase, we do things like user interview to understand the user. Define phase, we start, like defining the design principles. And then design phase, we're thinking about like mocking up things, drawing out flows and wireframes. On the deliver phase, it's when we start to do like real prototypes and demos and builds and specifications for our engineering team to actually implement. So those are the 4 phases that we do at work, and we're hoping to apply that to our life. All right, Lia, you want to give us an intro of the first step?
Cool. Yeah. So as Hannah was saying, this is kind of like how we do design work in our day-to-day and how we get it applied to life. So the first phase is discover. And discover is all about discovering the gaps between your current situation and your ideal life. In product design, this is how we do it. I'm pulling up my notes here, but
yeah, in product design, like project doesn't just born out of a need, show up. Like we actually discover a need for the project, like either is a bug that our customer are complaining about, or sometimes it may be an innovation push to solve a problem in a novel way. There are things that we do, like for instance, user interview, like I mentioned. We understand the user goals and needs and the pain points. And then we also do like comparative analysis to see how other competitors solve the same problem, right? In the discover phase in product design, we will also, maybe create a persona to help the stakeholders align on the stories and the experience. We may do audit of our current design system to see what we are doing it today as well.
And so what this means to life, right? It's kind of like understanding where you are. So discovering where you're spending your time and energy right now, like what your current state is, what are important elements for you in your life, right? Because this will ultimately drive like what you prioritize, what you hold important. So, in a nutshell, it's summarizing like what your old life or your current life is, and where the gap is, right? Like, well, what's not working and how do you plan for the future? So, like we will explore a few exercises here, but we have a lot of tools, exercises, frameworks on getting clarity, right? For how do you know, like, where are you right now? Like it's raising that self-awareness. So it includes like, what does your ideal day look like? Everything from like an ideal life, right? Like 6 months or a year out. What are your short-term goals, long-term goals? And then identifying the gap of like, how far are you actually away from getting there? And ultimately, like, how can you get there, right? Like there's not one right way, but the creativity comes in from exploring all the different ways like you can get there.
Yeah, so since this is a workshop, we want to, do some simple exercise with you all today. So I hope you come prepared with some pen and paper. And if anyone needs some time to grab a piece of paper and pen, we can, you can go do it right now. And I would like us to think about maybe a focus area that you want to, maybe a situation that happened recently that you want to have some solution. Maybe it didn't go quite well with what you expected. So if you don't have a specific topic in mind that you want to explore today, you can be more general as well. And I'll guide you through some exercise. In the workshop today, we're going to have 4 exercises, so like 1 exercise per phase, hoping to guide you through a deliver phase that, you have some action items to take after this workshop. So anyway, so the first exercise we're gonna do is called mind mapping, and this is my favorite tool of, discover your life and discover the issues with any topics that you encounter. So what is a mind map? So a mind map in design is a graphical way to represent ideas and concepts. It is a design thinking tools that help, to structure information and help you better analyze and comprehend, synthesize, and recall all of those information. It's an outline, where there are major categories radiated from the center image, and then subcategories that branch out from the large branch. So if you have a piece of paper, maybe start looking at the right side of the slice. And what we're gonna do is to basically take an audit of either your life or the topic that you have in mind. And so what you want to do is really, start from the center, my life, or whatever topic that you're thinking, and think about your current life and current situation. What are the major components in your life? So for me, it may be work, family, friends, skiing, maybe some hobby like baking. And right now, those main parts in the circle, we have 6 circles here as like subcomponents, but don't be restricted. Like use as many big circle as you need, and then start to branch out to details. Like for instance, I can say family, maybe the family local, family remote, and etc. So literally just lay it all out, and you can start with the most obvious ones, and then start to fill in details. You know, so any questions before we start?
Oh, and here's an example of what Hannah did before.
Oh yeah, this is example that I did. Like again, it can be your life, it can be anything. So this is examples that I did for life experience design. And as you can see, you know, we have workbook, we have exercise, and now we're doing a workshop. We also have a podcast, and just like trying to branch out visually of what's that topic that you're thinking. What are the components inside?
Cool.
So, I think we can take about 5 minutes to do this exercise, and I'll start a timer. And I'll call everyone back. Timer started.
And let us know if you have any questions. Yeah. But it's about self-awareness and self-discovery. So
I have a quick question.
yeah, what's up?
I have done mapping before, and I feel like it's been a long time, but I feel like, you know, this begins to get very granular. Do you suggest that you start very high level off of that topic center, like my life, or that you try to get more, you know, granular and specific?
Yeah, the idea is to be generic on the higher, on the central levels, right? Like, for instance, my life can be family and friends, and then you want to get, you know, granular in the details level. So as you can see, like on the high level, I lay out LED with all of those components, but then I get very granular on like editing and recording and all those things. Maybe you can even get into like your daily plan, daily schedule. Yeah, so the goal is to start from the high level theme, and then you get granular and detailized. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Cool. Right, I'm gonna reset the timer. So 5 minutes starting now.
You have music, Hannah?
Yeah, I'm pulling up. This one. All right, time's up. How's everyone doing? Good. So I would like to ask if anyone wants to share anything. You don't have to share like the whole picture, but only if you're comfortable sharing what you discover. Any volunteers?
I can go.
Oh yeah, Tracy.
Yeah, so I just tried to start thinking about the things that I was involved in and interested in. I didn't get finished with like all the granular details for each category, but some of the major ones that I picked was family, friends, exercise, health and wellness. I kind of separated those two. Travel, my website writing, and networking and comedy were like the major categories. And then I got halfway through like granular details for each, but didn't get that far.
That's great. How does it feel seeing all of this visually?
Yeah, I mean, it felt nice to organize it and get a little bit more detailed. And after this call, I think I'm going to hash out a little bit more. This year I was like not surprised necessarily, because this year was the first year I decided to make a vision board of things that I wanted to accomplish, like, on a weekly, yearly, or whatever basis. So a lot of the things I just mentioned was already written down there. So it wasn't necessarily a surprise, but just getting more detail.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else wants to go?
I guess I'll just say that like after I did get kind of granular with some of mine already, so I have a lot on the page. So it's like in one way you feel like a sort of a dump from your mind to be I don't want to say like a sort of relief, but like when you just need to like write it all down. But then immediately following that, once you have scribbled so much, you're kind of like overwhelmingly unorganized. So I can see how this is probably a very helpful process to go through and organize.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I like how you mentioned like kind of like dumping all the things in your mind into the paper. And I actually use this tool very beginning of the day. So I'll be like, oh, things I need to do today. And then I branch out to like big pockets, like what I need to do for the family and friends and works and career and all these things. And what it does is really helping me organize things in a way that a to-do list doesn't do, right? Like usually I'll have a to-do list and it was so hard to digest because there were so many things out of order. The other thing that I'll suggest is maybe using color coding so that you have like a better organizing visual way to put things in the bucket. Anything else? Anyone else wants to share?
Yeah, I guess the one thing with my process was I started finding more like higher level categories. So I started with like my life, and then emotional health, physical health, spiritual health. And then I'm like, oh, let me just roll these all up under health and then have them branch out. So I found that I was kind of doing that. Like from my life, I have relationships. And then from that, it branches out to like friends, family, my romantic relationship, like colleagues, that type of thing. Because otherwise it seems like I just have a bunch of branches. So that was just like my way of organizing, I think.
There's nothing wrong with having lots of branches either. I think, everyone organizes differently. And I think it's a good visual way, like after you do this a few times, you start to see, I think, trends of like kind of where your mind goes to, or your priorities, or, you know, what's important to you ultimately, right? Like clearly the things you don't think about anymore, you know, aren't like top of mind. And I think it's like, it's a good purging, right? Or as Hannah likes to say, like, it's like Marie Kondoing your life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did do a bucket, like this is something new, but I did a bucket for like self-discovery and learning, because I feel like that's a different thing. Like it can be attached to your relationships or your career or whatever, but I feel like it's a different like mindset, and you know, like having to set time for that. So that was something I thought was pretty cool.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's good to hear. And I think that it will also evolve. Like it's not a tools that you just use it once and you say, oh, I discovered it already and done. Like you can use it many times. It's kind of like a muscle, you know. When you go to the gym, you can go every day. And the more that you practice, the more that you'll be more aware of yourself and mindful.
And one last thought, like you don't always have to start with my life in the middle. Like if you want to go deep dive right into one topic, or maybe you have like one big decision you need to make and you're like agonizing over it, right? It's a good way to just list out pros, cons, and like why you're thinking like something's a pro. And, you know, I think it's, you know, visualize, get it all out of your head. So it's great. So let's see, I'm going to move on to our second step, which is define. And what this means here, right now that you kind of laid everything on your paper, on the table, literally, you want to start kind of synthesizing it back in, right? Like you have all these interests, all these areas of your life. Definition is about kind of bringing it back together and kind of identifying like a layer on top of that, like your values and vision, things that have held true for you, you know, a good portion of your life. And, you know, in our day-to-day in product design, how we use this definition phase is everything from, you know, what the company believes in, like what's their mission statement, right? Because that's something that has to hold true always, right? You know, and Hannah, I think, were you going to speak a little more on that?
Yeah, I can share a little bit more. Some examples about like company mission and value. Like for instance, Google's value is the three respects, like respect the user, respect the opportunity, and respect each other. And that's how they conduct the in the pursuit of their mission, right? Like so that their mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And then so for IKEA, they have a mission which is to create a better everyday life for many people. And with that vision, you can see the IKEA furniture is, you know, at a very low price, so that many people can purchase and possible to afford them. So, you know, that's where IKEA kind of like define the vision, and then the product they're developing are following the vision. For instance, Disney is to entertain, inform, and inspire people around the globe through the power of unparalleled storytelling. You know, so that reflects their brand and the creative mindset. And you know, that's how they becomes the world's premium entertainment company. Other things like tech talks, they are spreading ideas. So like you can find all of these examples of how company define their mission, and that's what we in design we really want to align our principle, the design principle, into that bigger goal and bigger mission statement of the company, and the vision, the value of the company too.
Right. So to put into perspective, like Scandinavian design, or, you know, like different like furniture companies, right? Like run the gamut, like, you know, Crate and Barrel is going to be different from IKEA. They're serving different audiences. Disney is not going to go into, well, I mean, they kind of go into food, but you know, entertainment is like their main thing, right? Like they know who they are, they know who they aren't, and maybe they dabble in the middle like sometimes. But, you know, ultimately that's what, you know, we're trying to do in life as well. So applying it to life, I I don't know how many of you have done this exercise. I think it probably has come up for me a few times, you know, like in like professional development trainings, or they're like, yeah, you know, circle, like, here's a values list, and circle like 5 that resonate with you. And there's a lot of lists online you can look up. But I think it's always fun to go through this exercise. Like, what are your guiding values and principles? Like, what becomes your personal philosophy, right? Like, just like, you know, Hannah mentioned, like, you know, TED Talk is like spread ideas. Like, what's your personal vision and mission, right? Like, as you move through life, you know, is there like a sentence or something that you can come up with that holds true to you, that holds, you know, value and meaning? So that way, whenever you're faced with like a tough decision, you start to understand what you stand for and what you will and won't tolerate. And then creating this vision, like, lets you, you know, purposely and intentionally live out your values. So anytime you think, right, like something is a conflict, ooh, should I take this job or not? Or, you know, like the city seems pretty cool, like maybe I can live here one day. Like, you know, what is it about that that's important to you or resonating with you, right? Because it is touching a nerve. And then, you know, like, articulate it. And then that can serve you, right? Even in your day to day, like, as, you know, like maybe you feel uncomfortable saying no to something or yes to something. You know, I think it makes it easier when you have this bigger like vision or purpose for yourself, where you can say like, no, I can't because, right, like I have family time, right? You know, 7 to 9 p.m. is my family time, or whatever that is, right? I think it removes like the burden of like, is this a good decision or not? Or should I not? And you get to the root of, no, like, this is my priority, right, in the season of my life. And, you know, I think it just makes it easier.
All right, here we come, the second exercise. And are you ready? Okay, so this exercise, I call it my heroes. What I would like you to do is maybe go back to your first exercise and go through the main components and think through if there is anyone, when you are laying out your life or whatever topic that you're drawing in the mind map, are there anyone that come across your mind, who you admire and who inspire you? So think about those people as your heroes. They can be someone as close as your parents or a celebrity. So just think about the people who inspire you. And I would like you to draw an icon or symbol to represent each of your heroes. So like, the point of drawing the symbol and icon, I'm not saying that you should draw the face. For instance, like, one of my heroes is Kobe Bryant, and I'll probably draw like a basketball, right? So just draw a symbol of your hero, and that will help you like visualize in your kind of perspective. And then what you really want to do is to think through your hero's qualities and why are they inspiring you? What are the qualities that are most inspiring for you? And so you want to list them out in bullet points. And that's the first part. Any questions before I start the timer?
Should we do like more than one hero?
Yeah, do as many as you want. Usually I would recommend maybe 3 to 4, like at least 3.
Okay.
Is this part of the design or design phase or define phase?
Define. This is the second phase, define. So we want to discover your core value. So we already explore and discover your life. So go through the paper of the mind map and think through, like, in those key components that you lay out, are there any people you admire or reminds you in each of the area?
Okay.
Define your heroes. All right, I'm gonna start the timer. Thumbs up. How's everyone doing? Anyone want to share? What do you find?
I can go if nobody else wants to go. I picked 4. So I have Michelle Obama, and like her values are integrity, bravery, empathy, and humility. So to me, she's kind of like the superwoman, person that I aspire to. And then I have Sarah Bareilles, who she's like a singer-songwriter. So I really admire her creativity, the fact that she has a really strong voice and her authenticity. And then my third one is this Asian American woman named Michelle Kim, and she's a pretty big diversity and inclusion like activist. So I really like her activism, her courage, and her focus on social justice and inclusivity. And then my final one was Brene Brown, and obviously it's vulnerability, since that's her whole platform. And I just like how that's kind of like the root of developing strong connections, kind of focusing on our emotional and spiritual health, and then accountability. So I really like that she kind of calls that stuff out.
That's so cool. And how do you see this tie back to what you discover in the mind map?
I mean, I think they're all kind of like the humility piece, like they're all definitely on this path of self-discovery and learning, and they kind of share what they know. So I like the fact that they're like big people, like they're very successful within their field, but they're very vulnerable and kind of sharing their failings and their real feelings. So I really appreciate that.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else?
I can go.
Awesome.
I picked my grandmother was the first person, and I picked the qualities for her was sociable, relatable, loving, and humorous. And then the second person I picked was Lucille Ball for her humor, strength, intellect, determination, perseverance, and trend setting. I also I picked three people, and the third person was Ruth Bader Ginsburg, brilliant, determined, trend setting, and impartial. And that's all I have.
And that's cool. Again, is this tied to kind of like the major components in your mind map? And how is it connected?
I think the thing that I would tie back to all three of them would be independent. And I don't want to use the word intellectual, but like intellectual in different rights, like not comparing my grandmother or Lucille Ball and Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the same intellectual level, or, all going to Harvard, but, being able to handle their own life and their own circumstances and being street smart, book smart, whatever. And, having a sense of, some of them were comedians, some of them were just funny people, others were more intellectual people, but they all kind of had a sense of humor and, some sort of dig or sarcasm in their repertoire.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. Anyone else? This is the most fun part, is to share. Girls?
I'm not gonna lie, I spent a lot of time drawing, which I'm not good at, but I do think that I get a lot out of having visual aids, and so I think that those can be really like powerful in different ways. So that was important to me, and because I do this often, think about people that I admire, those kind of qualities were kind of already there in mind. But to like, as you were asking them, how does this tie back? I thought, well, of course it ties back because I directly chose those people from the mind map topics. Like I thought about those based on the things that came off of the life path. But the overarching, I guess, sort of like gap indicator in some ways does show up, which is like authenticity for me. So I think that the people that I admire all sort of like really carved their own path based on who they are. Like it wasn't just like something that was like somebody super successful that like I'm like, wow, they have such an amazing job or whatever. It was like they became everything that they are because they really followed an authentic way for them. So anyway, I think that kind of struck me as Tracy was sharing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I it's very interesting that you mentioned that you pick those people out of your topic. So that's great. Anyone else? No?
I can
Okay.
go quickly too.
Yeah, let's do it.
Hi. I chose 4 people quickly. And I chose an executive with whom I work. His name's Mandel, but he's authentic. He's kind of an expert generalist. He's personable. Even though he's an executive, he's always the first one to crack a joke or call someone out to say hello. So I really like working with him, and he's a big family man. I put my mom just because she has a heart of gold, and she's always so generous and very proactive and reliable. And she also always puts family first. And then I put Holly Branson, who's very entrepreneurial and philanthropic. She's kind of an elite athlete, and she has a medical degree, but decided, I'm going to do what I want to do. And I think I really respected that independence and sense of free spirit. So, taking that, looking back at my mind map, I put family down first and didn't even realize it on the last one. So that was fun for me to just connect back. And then I think in terms of everything else, I think a lot of people have talked about self-discovery. I think to me, curiosity and authenticity is very important to my life. And so my heroes all have a sense of that entrepreneurial spirit as well.
That's cool. I like how you choose people that are so close to you and you can see like pretty much every day. And that's a great example. The other thing that I noticed in our last workshop, in like when COVID first started, is someone in our workshop mentioned that the heroes are people who fight in the front line, are the doctors, the nurses, the maybe people in the supermarket that are serve other people's needs. And I feel that was very interesting. Like there are people, it can be a group of people. It doesn't have to be a specific person that you can name. It can be a general, group of people that they're there, but you probably don't know their name yet. Like it can be a concept, is what I was trying to say. Like hero, you're looking for that quality that you're inspiring for. And here's the fun part, is you're gonna look down on your paper again and review the quality, and now you're gonna cross out their name, and all these qualities are yours now. So in this define phase, what we're really trying to do is, like think through what you value the most. And all of these people who inspire you, they have something that you really value, and those are your values. So I want us to take a couple minutes to, like really sort through your heroes and their qualities and come up with a summary of what are your value. So I'm going to give everyone just 2 minutes to do that. Just consolidate all your thoughts, go through the quality list and come up with your top 5 values, 3 to 5 values, or even a little more. Okay, again, I'm gonna start a timer. This time is 2 minutes so that you can quickly summarize your values. All right, time's up. Cool. Lia, shall we move to the next phase?
Yeah, let's do it. All right. Well, I hope that was a fun discovery. It's always a fun exercise. And it helps you identify with values without the pressure of identifying your values. So the next up is design. So we're not going to go like crazy, but you can draw however you want or write, whatever medium you feel most comfortable in. But in this phase, it's all about creativity and exploration, if that makes sense. So ultimately in the design phase, when you're applying it to life, it's coming up with different solutions for what your top priorities are, what you started to identify in your mind map, and then in your values, and now kind of bridging that to, well, you know, what does the ideal look like for you? So tying this back in our day jobs and why this works, you know, a few things, you know, we've uncovered throughout the years in our career is, you know, when someone says like, okay, design something, right? You're like, well, first, like, what's the actual problem we're trying to solve? It always goes back to, you know, like people like have a pain point with it, or it doesn't function well. Or, right, like we want to explore something new. We want to try something that hasn't happened before. Right, and then we do go through the definition. So once we hit design, we kind of understand our constraints, right? Like our time and energy constraints. And when we're designing for a product, it's similar, right? Like you have constraints that keep you focused on what you want to design for. You never launch your first design, right? Like, you know, you always like try a few things, and this is where, you know, it's the most frustrating, but it's also the most exciting once you've kind of landed it, because you're like, well, obviously, you know, like I would do this, right? And then you realize, right, maybe there's like a gap in that solution, or it doesn't work out. Like if you put it in front of people and you're like, here, you know, try my website, and then they're like, we can't find the button to like get to the next page. So this is why it's always important to try different things, right? Or in this process, consider different approaches to what you might just think is like the first and only solution. There's always more solutions. And, you know, at work, right, we focus on the target user groups. Like you're never going to design for everybody, right? You're going to design for a certain, you know, user type or user group, right? Like, you know, the same product you're going to target for, you know, your everyday like person like downloading an app on, you know, Apple's App Store, or, you know, Android Play Store is not going to be the same person who's like running a multi-million-dollar business, right? Like, you know, it goes with scope and scale. And I think all of this just goes back to like, you know, what are your priorities in how you approach the design, but also, you know, never stick with your first design, right? There's always more to uncover.
All right, and that applies to life, is, you know, really about narrowing down your life into your focus area. Like life is short and you have limited amount of time, you can't do anything. So we should be focusing on areas that matters the most to you, areas that, you know, bring you to the most out of you, align to your value that you just defined, right? And then really understanding kind of like the scope of your project, or the scope of your dreams into the smaller chapters or projects, and then also coming up with different solutions so that you can tackle your chosen focus area. And the focus area again can evolve over time. Like for instance, in one time period you may be focusing on career, and then when you have kids, maybe the focus area will involve to, you know, be more around the kids and family. So those areas can change. So yeah, just again, this is a tools that you can use over time. And I'll encourage everyone to like re-examine your focus area within different situations. Like for instance, in COVID, like there are things that I was planning to do that has to be postponed, right? For instance, my wedding. And then there are things that, like you really have to find alternate ways. And this is where the different solution comes up. Like, for instance, we used to hang out with family and friends in person, indoor, invite them to our house. And within COVID, we may have to think about alternate solutions like virtual calls or hanging out outdoors, picnic. And those are things that you want to think through in different situations. But your focus area may not change. Your value would not change, right? And think through, again, for the COVID situation, your value again would not change, but things that you do can be different, like because we're all staying home, like things that we do maybe beyond what we were imagining before. And then with that, I hand it over to Lia to guide us through the next exercise, the focus area exercise.
So this is, as Hannah was saying, right? What are those focus areas for you right now? This will change and evolve over time, but you want to basically take like these values, inspired by your heroes, filtered by, some areas in life that you've identified in your life map, your mind mapping, and select like what 3, components do you want for your new normal, right? If you go back to your mind map, like this could be like a big focus area. Or you could like pull out what are the smaller branches, right? Like whatever you feel is like that right scope for you. And then in the next section, we'll continue refining that and break it into smaller and smaller pieces, right? So you can take action. But for this focus area, you want to, use those 3 circles, put these, 3 most important components that you want, and for your new normal or for, today moving forward. And write a few details about them, like what exactly is it that you want to have happen, right? Like whether it's focusing more on, health and wellness or relationships or your career or whatever that could be, and then get a little bit more specific. Then what about that do you want to see happen for you? One other thing here, so you'll see the lines on the bottom, is just what's one thing you want to avoid? So we talked a little bit about constraints and kind of honing in once again, like what will be a hard no for you, right? What do you not want in your life? Get clear with it, and then that way, when you notice it coming up, right, then you set this intention, like, no, I won't invite that into my life. So questions for this exercise? Pretty clear. Feel free to ask anytime, even when we start the timer.
Yeah, I'm gonna start the timer. 5 minutes starting now. All right, thumbs up. How's everyone doing?
Everyone good? Need more time? Anyone feel
Okay.
comfortable sharing?
I
Should we
can
call
share.
Okay, go ahead. I'm like, I don't want to keep going.
So I'm a little background is I'm in school right now, finishing up my MBA. So there are a lot of changes happening in my life, which is causing a lot of anxiety. But I was able to simplify it into 3 main topics. One is to get a job that I love, and emphasis on the love part instead of just getting a job for the sake of it. Or like the first job that comes to me. The second was Marie Kondo my living situation, because I have an apartment, but I spend all my time at my boyfriend's house because of COVID and the way everything is, and my parents live nearby. And while it sounds like a nice problem to have, it actually like creates a lot of confusion in my life. And so that's something I need to figure out soon. And then my third is to strengthen my healthy habits, both like mentally and physically. I feel like a lot of times I get caught up in things, and like I want to develop a better routine and like better self-awareness and things like that in this year.
Awesome.
And in terms of what I want to avoid, mainly I wrote a lot of things down, but it kind of just has to do with like being negative or self-sabotaging and thinking that something's never going to happen, which defeats all of my goals anyway. So yeah.
Cool. How did you feel going through this process of coming?
It felt good to like organize my thoughts, because I feel like I have so much going on and I'm living through it, and so it can all blend in with each other. So it felt nice to kind of like boil it down to distinct points.
That's awesome. And it's just to get on paper, right? You're like, okay, it's not all the things anymore. It's like, okay, at least let me get these 3 things
Yeah.
done. Right? It kind of like makes it a little less intimidating. Great. Thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? See, it's not so scary. Maybe the cat wants to share.
I can share if nobody wants to go. I'll be quick. So my 3 are, I just launched my small business like 2 days ago. So that's one. And it's like it's like handmade gifts. So that definitely ties to my value of creative expression and authenticity. Kind of like Sylvia, it's like something I actually want to do for a job. So my goal there is to make it something full time. So to really focus on growing it. Thank you. And then my second one has to do with relationships, because like Hannah, I was supposed to get married last year. So now I have a year, and I feel like we're going to be way more prepared now after going through everything together. So I think that's just a focus, just to build a strong foundations going into that marriage later this year. So I'm reading some books about it and stuff like that. And then the third bucket is activism. So I just kind of got a fire lit under me this past year. And so just continuing to speak out against, you know, wrongdoings and just being more conscious about where I'm investing my money. So trying not to shop on Amazon, even though I still do, but really supporting like more women of color businesses as much as possible. And just like uplifting those voices. And yeah, so those are my three. And then avoiding is just to like stop saying yes to things I don't want to do. So it's sort of like just honoring, like so it's avoiding not honoring my boundaries and avoiding like people pleasing, because that's something I can really like slide into pretty easily. And then I feel like because we're home, sometimes you don't have an excuse if you don't want to do something, but it's still okay to say no. So I have to remind myself of that.
Cool. How did you feel? Any discoveries?
It was good. I was like, okay, these three, I feel like that's a good balance, because it's relationships, career, and like something good for the world. So yeah, I think just like Sylvia, it kind of makes it less overwhelming.
Yeah. That's great.
And I think like the avoiding is key, because if I say yes to things, then I start getting sidetracked.
Then you don't focus on your focus areas. Then you start drifting, and
yeah, you start like getting on other people's agendas. Like, what do they want you to do for them?
They're gonna follow the things you hoped and wanted for yourself. So cool. Thank you. All right. Everyone ready for the final phase? I can get the slides. Okay, cool. So for deliver, right? So this is all about, right, taking action on your first step, right? Taking action on one of your focus areas, and it could be the smallest action as long as you're, feeling like it's a little uncomfortable and you're growing. So before we jump into like what this means for life, going back to product design, right? Like it's always exciting to launch something, but it also means, right? So I guess the interesting thing about product design is there's other teams that's actually going to build out the design, right? It's kind of like if, I were an architect, I may not be the one actually like, building, the stuff. It's similar to digital design. We hand off like, our final mocks and how things are going to be spaced out on a page and all those specs to an engineering team. And along with, that handoff are, like very clearly written, like, here's what happens when a user clicks on this, right? Does the button change color? Like, do you see a hover state? What are the words on the screen, right? Like it gets very detailed. And it needs to be this way, so that way you're not blocking someone or someone's not trying to make assumptions on, well, what does this, actually mean, right? Because like, it's like a game of telephone. Like if you're not clear, right, it can kind of start to become ambiguous. Same with like your deadlines and expectations. Like, when you have a launch date, you have a launch date and you need to hit that date. So this delivery phase is all about being clear what needs to happen when. And where those interdependencies are, right? Like life is life, situations happen, your context changes, environment changes, situations change, right? Day to day. So you want to be clear with yourself. How might, that outside then impact what you set out to do? And, life's about pivoting and iterating. So yeah, how might you get clear here? And Hannah, do you want to go through these details about applying it?
Yeah. So when that apply into life, is all about, define small tasks and set timeline. Once you have a plan, now that you have the design, you want to start executing. And part of this, I always tell people my story about like, okay, I have, a dream about traveling around the world, and it was just a dream, and I have a full-time job. It seems very unrealistic until, inspired by a friend, I set a goal to visit 33 countries before 33. And what does that for me is, one, that it has a timeline, 33 years old, and then it's a measurable goal. So 33 country helps me, scope appropriately so that I know, okay, some of the travel that I want to do needs to really be planned ahead of time to, fit in my 15 days vacation per year. And some trips I plan like a year ahead of time. And then the other thing is, once I have like this 33 by 33 thing going on, I tell all my friends, and sometimes it will get deprioritized. Things will get deprioritized. But when you have those sharing with your friends, people are going to remind you. And so my friend was like, "Oh, how's your thing going?" And they check in and kind of like remind me that I have this big goal that I want to accomplish. So there's a lot of things on how to execute on your plans. One thing that I feel that it was very helpful is either you set reminders for yourself, or like just make it visible, talking to your friend, let them remind you, give you that little peer pressure. And the most important thing is that you want to step out of your comfort zone and find that like kind of scary but exciting things. And that's how we grow. So yeah, applying to life, I think deliverables are just kind of like how you execute on what you discover, what you define your values are, and what your design solution, and make it real.
Yeah, so the exercise here, I mean, it looks like a to-do list, but it's cooler than a to-do list. So you're going to pick one focus area, right? So we've talked about like honing in, right? You're like, oh, well, if these 3 things seem manageable, well, let's challenge you even further and pick one, right? What one focus area do you want to tackle from your previous exercise? And then go deep here, right? Like, what are different ways then to get to where you want to go with that focus area, right? Like, whether it's decluttering your room or your house, or, all the stories we heard, like, how do I, become more authentic, or how do I, pivot, like, my focus at work, and whatever that is, right? Like, there are alternate ways, right? We've done it with COVID. How do you work from home, right? When it's like chaos and you're sharing space with people. There's alternate ways, right? Like, I can find another room, or we take turns. I don't know. Get creative here. And you might get stuck on like the first one, but just write. Like, there is no wrong answer here. This is just, you want to get those ideas flowing again. So within the context, right, that bounding box of one focus area, what are additional ways you can accomplish what you set out to do? Write down all of those to-dos that come up. So, this is just going to be a detailed list, and then set a timeline, right? Like, and this is just more for, once again, scoping, right? Like, Hannah's 33 countries by 33 years is like, a little bit longer. And then, some things like, I want to read a book, right? Like, can you do that in like 2 weeks? Is it a month, right? Like, apply, if you're doing classes right now, or if you have a full-time job or whatever that is, like, what are those constraints? Be real about what you can actually do. So that's what the timeline thing is about. It's kind of like pressure testing what your reality allows you to do, or maybe you're like, oh, something has to budge for me to spend more time on this. But this will help you, right, in starting to get commitments for yourself on things that you want to add to your life, and hold that space. Like, this isn't a commitment to do all the things. This is just, here's all the ways you could possibly accomplish something from that focus area you've defined for yourself. So with that said, any questions here? Is that pretty clear?
All right, with that, I'm gonna set a timer for another 5 minutes. And I think the most important thing is the date. So you want to commit to your next step and a date. All right, thumbs up. How's everyone doing? I think with that, I hope that you know, you can start executing your dream. And the point is that things will change. And again, these tools that we share with you today can be used anytime, and you can reflect, evaluate, redefine, redesign your life in different situation, and you can deep dive into one area. And when you feel that what your ideal life is happening, and you loved it, and that means it's a good fit. And if not, if anything still feel off, like that's when you start iterating. So just adjust to your plan, adjust to your focus area, and then you want to make sure that you still align to that core value that you define, right? Like that's the guiding principle. Your value, your philosophy may barely change throughout your life. So stick to those values, and that's the core of yourself. And then you just keep iterating, keep changing to improve your life, moving from a version 1 to a version 2.
Yeah, so, the recap of the design process, I mean, it's in a circle because, we're in the mode of constantly like something else comes up, right? And then, or you reflect, you're like, ooh, I probably shouldn't have done that. Or, maybe jogging 5 times a week is like too much for me right now. Whatever it is, right? You can pivot, you can reassess, and then rediscover like, well, what part didn't work? Was it jogging itself? Was it just my health goals? Or, maybe I don't know, hikes instead. So you discover, define, design, and deliver, just, iterate and refine, and then try again, right? Then, tackle a different goal, a different commitment, right? One that you can hold true to yourself and that still feels good. So that's the design process in a nutshell.
If you want to learn more about life experience design, you can go to our website, lifeexperience.design, and we are currently running a first 6-week program that we're going to have like deep dive of your life with more exercise. So this exercise that we shared tonight was just a very high level snippet. So we're going to have more exercise to help you, guide you through thinking about your life and get clarity, so that you can live a mindful and intentional life. Check out our website, check out our program, and it's okay if you're not ready yet. I would recommend you go check out our podcast, and that's free. There's a link there, anchor.fm/life experience design. You can also just search life experience design on any podcast app of choice of yours. And you'll see us. It's 2 illustrations of us with a light bulb in the center. And you can follow us on Instagram too at Life Experience Design. And if you want to share anything that you discovered today, you draw down today, your journal today, feel free to post on Instagram and tag us. Either is a story or is a picture. Tag us and let us know if you would like to be featured. So that's it. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much.
Hope this was helpful.
Thank you so much, Hannah and Lia. People are already dropping, but real quick, we're launching our first. Do you want to stop the recording, Hannah? Because we're going to talk about this the next meeting.
All right.
I don't want to mess up here.
I'm going to stop recording.